The alarm woke Captain Jinho from a restless sleep. He sat up in his quarters aboard the UES Indomitable and pressed the communication button on his wall panel. "Report," he said, his voice still rough from sleep. "Unknown vessel detected, sir," the night officer replied. "It's broadcasting a distress signal. The ship is badly damaged." Jinho pulled on his uniform and headed to the bridge. The Indomitable was 3 weeks into a routine patrol of the outer colonies. They shouldn't have found anything out here except empty space and distant stars. When he reached the bridge, Lieutenant Yang was already at his station. The young officer looked worried. On the main screen, Jinho could see a ship unlike anything in Earth's databases. It was covered in strange symbols and leaking atmosphere from dozens of holes in its hull. "Scan it," Jinho ordered. "Life signs detected," Yang reported. "Hundreds of them. The ship is falling apart, Captain. If we don't help them soon, they'll all die." Jinho knew the rules. Humanity was supposed to stay in their own territory. The Galactic Council had made that very clear 50 years ago when they first discovered Earth. They called it a Class 9 and told humans to stay away from other civilizations. Too dangerous, they said. Too violent. But Jinho had never been good at following rules when lives were at stake. "Bring them aboard," he said, carefully. Dr. Sun met the refugees in the cargo bay. She had prepared the area as best she could, setting up medical stations and bringing food and water. When the airlock opened, she gasped. The aliens looked like giant insects, but they moved with a grace that seemed almost human. Their bodies were covered in a hard shell that shimmered with blue and green colors. Each one had 4 arms and large eyes that reflected the cargo bay lights. The first alien to step forward was clearly their leader. It wore some kind of official robe and carried a staff that seemed purely decorative. "I am of the people," the alien said. Its voice came from a translation device attached to its chest. "Please, we need your help. Our worlds are dying." Sun guided them to the medical stations. Ambassador arrived shortly after, having been woken by the commotion. Together, they listened as told their story. They had once controlled 12 star systems. They were mathematicians and engineers, famous throughout the galaxy for their beautiful cities and peaceful culture. They had avoided war for 300 years. Then the swarm came. "They consume everything," explained, its voice shaking. "They land on our worlds and eat all living matter. Plants, animals, our people, nothing stops them. Our weapons don't work. Our shields fail. World after world, we watched our homes disappear." "How many are left?" asked gently. "Maybe 2 million of our people escaped," said. "Out of 8 billion, the rest are gone." Sun felt sick. An entire civilization, almost completely destroyed. "Why come to us?" Jinho asked. He had joined them in the cargo bay, watching the refugees receive medical care. "The Galactic Council has many powerful species. Why seek out humans?" Turned to face him. Even through the alien features, Jinho could see desperation in its eyes. "Because they are afraid of you," said simply. "The Council classified Earth as a forbidden world. They say humans are the most dangerous species ever discovered. They say you come from a world so deadly that it made you into something terrifying." Jinho frowned. "We're not monsters." "No," agreed. "But you are survivors. You evolved fighting every day just to live. Your world tried to kill you with diseases, predators, weather, everything. And you didn't just survive. You conquered it all. You became the top predator on a planet full of predators." The moved closer, its 4 arms gesturing as it spoke. "They come from an easy world. They never faced real danger, so they never learned real fear. They spread and consume because nothing has ever stopped them. The galaxy's peaceful species have no answer for them." "But you think we do," Yang said, understanding. "I hope you do," replied, "because you are our last chance. The Council voted not to intervene. They said the cost would be too high. They are negotiating with the trying to establish boundaries that don't include space. Ambassador looked at Jinho. The council will be angry if we get involved. They might see it as humans interfering in galactic affairs. There could be consequences. Jinho walked to the cargo bay windows and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an entire species was being exterminated. The galaxy's great powers had decided it wasn't worth the risk to save them. He thought about Earth. Humanity had almost destroyed itself 3 times in the last century. Wars over resources, territory, ideologies. They had learned hard lessons about the cost of standing by while others suffered. "How long until your people are completely gone?" Jinho asked. 6 months, said quietly. Maybe less. The swarm is methodical. They will finish what they started. Jinho turned back to face the alien. "You broke council rules to find us. You risked everything on the hope that Earth's monsters would help you." "Yes," said. "Then you should know something about humans," Jinho continued. "We are violent. We are dangerous. The council is right to fear us, but we are also loyal to those we choose to protect, and we really, really hate bullies." He pulled out his personal communicator and opened a secure channel to Earth Command. Admiral Sangmi answered immediately, her face stern on the small screen. "Captain Jinho," she said, "it's the middle of the night here. This better be important." "Admiral, I'm invoking Armageddon Protocol," Jinho said calmly. There was a long silence. Armageddon Protocol had only been used twice in human history. It meant a threat so large that Earth's entire military might was needed. It meant war. "Explain," Sangmi ordered. Jinho explained everything. The swarm, the genocide, the council's refusal to help. When he finished, Sangmi's expression hadn't changed. "You understand what you're asking," she said. "We'll be going against council orders. We could start a diplomatic crisis. Some species might see this as human aggression." "I understand, Admiral." "Good." Sangmi's stern face broke into a cold smile. "Because I'm approving your request. We'll mobilize the fleet immediately. If the galaxy won't stop a genocide, then Earth will, alone if necessary." The communication ended. Jinho looked at. "You came looking for monsters," he said. "I hope you're ready for what happens next." 3 days later, the first human warships began arriving. Then more. Then hundreds more. Stood at the Indomitable's observation deck, watching ship after ship emerge from slip space. They were nothing like the elegant vessels of other species. Human ships were brutal, covered in armor and weapons. They looked like predators, designed to hurt and survive. "What have we done?" another whispered beside. "We've invited to war," replied. "May the stars have mercy on the swarm." In the flagship's conference room, Admiral Sangmi addressed her commanders. "And ladies," she said with a dangerous smile, "we're going hunting." The human fleet gathered in empty space like a pack of wolves preparing for a hunt. 300 warships of various sizes floated in perfect formation. Admiral Sangmi stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Vengeance, and watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. She had spent 40 years in Earth's military. She remembered the Martian rebellion, the resource wars, the brutal fight for the Jupiter colonies. She had learned a simple truth: humans were very good at war, too good sometimes. "Status report," she ordered. Colonel Dongwu's face appeared on her communication screen. He commanded the 3rd Shock Division, 3,000 Marines trained for hostile environment combat. "My people are ready, Admiral," Dongwu said. His face bore scars from a dozen battles. "Just point us at the enemy." "Patience, Colonel," Sangmi replied. "First, we need to understand what we're fighting." She switched channels to Dr. Sun, who was still aboard the Indomitable with the refugees. "Doctor, what have you learned about the—" Sun appeared on screen looking tired but excited. "Admiral, I've been studying their biology with help. They evolved on a Class 3 world. That's considered very safe by galactic standards. Lots of food, few predators, stable climate. So they're soft, Dongwu said with a grin. More than that, Sun continued. They've never faced real resistance. Their entire evolutionary history is about expansion and consumption, not survival against threats. They don't understand fear because they've never needed to. Sammy leaned forward. Go on. Their hive mind is their strength and their weakness, Sun explained. They coordinate perfectly, but they all think the same way. No individual initiative, no adaptation to unexpected situations. And Admiral, their biology has no immune system diversity. One virus could potentially affect their entire species. Are you suggesting biological warfare, Doctor? Sangmi asked carefully. I'm suggesting we have options they've never encountered before, Sun said. Try to fight them with conventional tactics, shields, energy weapons, traditional fleet battles. The adapted because that's what every species does. But humans don't fight like other species. Sangmi smiled. No, we don't. She opened a fleet-wide channel. Every captain, every officer, every soldier could hear her voice. Listen up, she said. We're about to start a war that the Galactic Council says we can't win. The swarm numbers in the billions. They've destroyed 12 worlds. They're continuing their expansion as we speak. She paused, letting that sink in. The Council thinks the cost of fighting them is too high. They're negotiating surrender terms, giving up to save themselves. But humans don't negotiate with bullies, and we don't abandon people who ask for our help. On ships throughout the fleet, soldiers and sailors straightened. They knew that tone. It meant someone was about to have a very bad day. We're going to teach the swarm something they've never learned, Sangmi continued. We're going to teach them fear. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten something a human has decided to protect. And we're going to do it using methods that would make the Council very uncomfortable. She pulled up a tactical map showing the held systems. We're not going to defend. We're not going to wait for them to come to us. We're going to strike at their home systems, their staging grounds, their resource worlds. We're going to make them afraid to leave their ships. And we're going to do it the human way. Engineer Bo Young listened from her workshop deep inside the Vengeance. She was a civilian contractor, brought in specifically for this mission. Her job was to adapt human weapons for use against the. She looked at the designs on her screens and smiled. The galaxy used energy weapons because they were clean and precise. Humans still used explosives, kinetic weapons, and chemical agents, not because they were primitive, but because they worked. Bo Young, how are the modifications coming? Sangmi's voice came through her communicator. Almost done, Admiral, Bo Young replied. I've adapted our munitions to exploit this physiology. Their shells are tough, but they're vulnerable to sustained kinetic impact and extreme temperatures. I've also prepared some surprises for their hive ships. Good, we'll need every advantage. In the fighter bays, Pilot Ho ran final checks on his interceptor. He was the squadron's best pilot, known for his reckless flying and impossible maneuvers. Some people said he had a death wish. Ho just said he trusted his skills. Attention all pilots, Commander Ra's voice came over the speakers. She was in charge of intelligence and mission planning. We're going to start with psychological warfare. They communicate through electromagnetic signals. We're going to hack their network and send them a message. What kind of message? Ho asked. The kind that will make them think twice about fighting humans, Ra replied. We've compiled footage from Earth's history. Predators hunting, natural disasters, human conflicts. We're going to flood their network with images of what are capable of. Another pilot laughed. You're going to show them Earth documentaries. I'm going to show them nightmares, Ra corrected. They have never seen a world like Earth. They've never imagined what kind of species could survive there. We're going to introduce ourselves properly. Captain Jinho sat in his quarters aboard the repaired Indomitable, reviewing the battle plans. His ship would be part of the first wave, along with 20 other vessels. Their job was to draw out the fleet while the main force moved into position. Lieutenant Yang entered without knocking, a habit Jinho had given up trying to break. "Captain, I've been thinking," Yang said. "The fought thee in open space, using traditional fleet tactics. What if we force them to fight in environments they're not prepared for?" "What do you mean?" "They avoid asteroid fields, gas giants, and areas with high radiation," Yang explained. "They prefer clean, open battles, but humans train for combat in extreme environments. What if we lure them into places they consider too dangerous?" Jinho smiled. "Like fighting in a storm or a jungle, use the terrain against them." "Exactly. They saw those areas as obstacles. We can use them as weapons." Jinho stood and clapped Yang on the shoulder. "That's good thinking, Lieutenant. Pass it along to Admiral Sangmi." Back on the Vengeance, Sangmi reviewed the incoming suggestions and tactical proposals. Her officers were already thinking like hunters, not soldiers. Good. Ambassador approached her on the bridge. "Admiral, I need to document everything that happens. The Council will demand an explanation, and Earth will need to justify our actions." "Justify?" Sangmi raised an eyebrow. "Ambassador, we're stopping a genocide. That's all the justification I need." "I agree," said. "But politics matter. We need to show that we followed rules of engagement, that we didn't become the monsters the Council fears." Sangmi nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Document everything. But understand this, Ambassador. I will do whatever is necessary to win this war and save the... If that makes Earth unpopular with the Council, I can live with that." Watched the human preparations with growing amazement. They had spent months trying to coordinate a defense. The humans had assembled an army in less than a week. "How can you move so quickly?" asked Dr. Sun. "Because we've done this before," Sun replied sadly. "Humans have been fighting wars for our entire history. We're very good at it." "That makes me grateful and terrified at the same time," admitted. "That's the right reaction," Sun said. Admiral Sangmi stood before her fleet commanders one final time before the operation began. "Remember," she said, "they don't know what fear is. They've never fought a species that evolved fighting for survival every single day. They think they're the ultimate predators." She showed her teeth in a smile that would have terrified any prey animal on Earth. "Let's educate them." The entire fleet jumped to slip space simultaneously, heading straight for the home systems. Not to defend, not to rescue, but to attack. The galaxy was about to learn what humans meant by total war. The swarm didn't expect the attack. For 300 years, they had been the attackers, the unstoppable force that consumed world after world. No species had ever struck at their home territory. When the human fleet emerged from slip space directly above their primary hive world, the response was confused and slow. By the time they organized their defenses, Commander Ra had already begun her work. Ra sat in a dark room filled with screens and communications equipment. Her team had spent 2 days breaking this network security. It wasn't difficult. They had never needed security because no one had ever attacked their systems. "Upload the package," she ordered. Her technicians pressed buttons, and suddenly every communication channel was flooded with images. Videos of Earth's most dangerous predators hunting and killing, footage of hurricanes destroying cities, recordings of human wars throughout history, the atomic bombs, the biological weapons, the endless creativity humans showed when it came to destroying things. And sounds, screaming, roaring, the crack of thunder, human voices shouting in languages they couldn't understand but that somehow conveyed pure aggression. For the first time in their existence, the swarm felt something they had no word for. The humans called it fear. "Psychological phase complete," Ra reported to Admiral Sangmi. "The network is showing signs of disruption. They're confused." "Good," Sangmi replied. Now let's make them terrified. All ships execute Phase 2. The human fleet didn't engage in traditional space combat. Instead, they scattered, each group heading for areas they considered too dangerous for warfare. Pilot Ho led his squadron directly into a massive field of asteroids orbiting the home world. The space was filled with spinning rocks, some as small as cars, others as large as cities. The fleet followed, their ships designed for open space combat. Stay close to the rocks, Ho ordered his pilots. Use them as cover. His interceptor dove and weaved through the asteroid field with impossible precision. Behind him, ships tried to follow, but their movements were too slow, too predictable. They crashed into asteroids or collided with each other trying to track the nimble human fighters. Ho's weapons weren't the clean energy beams used by galactic ships. They were explosive missiles that shattered asteroids into thousands of pieces. Each detonation created a storm of debris that tore through hulls. "This is Ho to Squadron," he called out. "They can't fly in chaos. Keep the field active." Within an hour, they lost 30 ships in the asteroid field. The human fighters lost none. On another front, Captain Jinho led the Indomitable and 5 destroyers into a gas giant's upper atmosphere. The churning clouds were filled with corrosive chemicals and violent winds. They had avoided this area during their war. The humans flew straight into it. "Shields holding," Lieutenant Yang reported. "They are following us in." "Good," Jinho said calmly. "Navigator, take us deeper." The Indomitable dove into the gas giant, its reinforced hull designed for this exact type of combat. Earth ships trained in oceanic environments, flying through storms that would destroy most vessels. This was just another storm. The ships weren't designed for it. Their hulls began to corrode as the acidic gases ate through their armor. Their sensors failed in the thick clouds. They fired blindly, hoping to hit something. The human ships hunted them like sharks in murky water, appearing suddenly from the clouds to strike before vanishing again. It was terrifying and effective. "Enemy fleet breaking apart," Yang reported. "They're trying to escape the atmosphere." "Let them go," Jinho ordered. "They'll spread the word, the need to know that humans can fight anywhere." But the most devastating attack came from Colonel Dongwu and his Marines. They didn't wait for space battles. They went directly to the source. Dongwu's assault ships pierced the defensive line and latched onto the side of a massive hive ship. Within minutes, his Marines were cutting through the hull. "Remember your training," Dongwu told his soldiers. "These things are tough, but they're not used to close combat. We are." The Marines poured into the hive ship wearing heavy armor and carrying weapons that the galaxy would consider primitive. Shotguns, flamethrowers, explosive charges, simple, reliable tools for killing. The inside the ship moved to repel the invaders, but they had never fought this way before. Their tactics were designed for consuming passive populations, not fighting trained soldiers in confined spaces. The Marines worked in small teams, just like they'd trained in urban combat on Earth. They didn't try to control the whole ship. They established fortified positions and held them, turning the hive ship's corridors into deadly mazes. Sergeant Nuyung led her squad through a narrow passage, her shotgun ready. A warrior rounded the corner, and she fired without hesitation. The creature's shell cracked under the kinetic impact. "They're not so tough up close," she reported. "Their armor is designed for energy weapons, not solid projectiles." More Marines pushed forward. They placed explosives at key points throughout the ship, targeting life support and power systems. They tried to adapt, but adaptation took time. The humans didn't give them time. "Charges set," Dongwu reported. "All teams withdraw to extraction points." The Marines fell back in an organized retreat, covering each other as they moved. When the last soldier was clear, Dongwu triggered the explosives. The hive ship tore itself apart from the inside. But the most horrifying weapon came from Dr. Min. He had worked with Dr. Sun to study the biology, searching for weaknesses. What he found changed the war. "Admiral, I have something," Min reported. "The hive mind depends on neural connections between individuals. Those connections use specific chemical signals. I've engineered a virus that disrupts those signals." "Will it kill them?" Sangmi asked. "No," Min said. "It will just break their connection to the hive mind. They'll still be alive, but they'll be confused, unable to coordinate, like cutting a puppet's strings." Sangmi understood immediately. "Deploy it." The virus spread through the fleet rapidly. Within days, entire ships stopped coordinating their movements. Warriors stood confused, unsure of what to do without the hive mind's guidance. Ambassador watched the tactical displays with mixed feelings. The humans were winning, but the methods they used were brutal and terrifying. "This will look bad to the Council," she told Admiral Sangmi. "I don't care how it looks," Sangmi replied. "I care that it works. They are still alive because we're willing to do what the Council wouldn't." "Some will call this war crimes," pressed. "Let them," Sangmi said coldly. "When they were exterminating the Council called it an unfortunate situation. When humans fight back, suddenly there are rules. I'm tired of playing by rules that only apply to us." 3 weeks into the war, the swarm was in chaos. Their fleets were scattered. Their hive mind was fragmenting. Their home worlds were under siege. They had never experienced anything like this. The galaxy watched in shock as humans did what every other species thought was impossible. They weren't just stopping they were defeating them. Commander Ra intercepted a communication. She played it for Admiral Sangmi. The message was simple and terrifying. In broken translation it said, "The humans are hunting us. They fight in ways we cannot understand. They create fear. What are we supposed to do against creatures that evolved fighting death itself?" Sangmi listened and nodded. "Good, they're learning. When fear takes root, the battle is already won." Captain Jinho stood on the Indomitable's bridge, watching another fleet retreat in disorder. "Captain, should we pursue?" Yang asked. "No," Jinho said. "Let them run. Let them tell others what they saw, the need to understand that humans are now their nightmare." Watched the tactical displays with a mixture of relief and horror. They were being saved, but the cost was visible. The humans were showing the galaxy exactly what made them dangerous. "Dr. Sun asked quietly, "Do humans always fight like this?" Sun looked at them with sad eyes. "Only when we have to. Only when something we care about is threatened. Humans learned a long time ago that sometimes the only way to protect life is to be very, very good at taking it." "And you live with this knowledge?" asked. "We do," Sun replied. "It's the burden of being a species we know how to be monsters, but we choose every day to be more than that. Today, we chose to be your monsters, the kind that protects instead of destroys." Looked back at the displays, watching human ships hunt through impossible terrain. "Thank you," said simply. "Even if the rest of the galaxy never understands, my people will remember that Earth's monsters saved us." Captain walked through the medical bay of the UES Vengeance, checking on patient after patient. The beds were full, but most of the soldiers weren't wounded by enemy fire. They were suffering from exhaustion, stress, and the psychological weight of sustained combat. "How many this week?" Admiral Sangmi asked, visiting the medical bay. 43 new cases, reported. Combat fatigue, anxiety attacks, sleep deprivation. "Admiral, humans are built for endurance, but even we have limits. We've been fighting nonstop for 6 weeks." Sangmi looked at the sleeping soldiers. Many of them twitched and moaned in their sleep, haunted by what they'd done and seen. "Can they continue?" Sangmi asked quietly. "Physically, yes. Mentally," shook her head. "I don't know. Some of them are starting to ask questions about what we're doing, about whether we're becoming the monsters the Council always feared." In the corner of the medical bay, Ensign Wu sat alone, staring at his hands. He was young, barely 23, fresh from the academy. This was his first real war, and it was nothing like the training simulations. Admiral Sangmi sat down beside him. "Talk to me, Ensign." "I killed them," Wu said softly. "I pressed the button and fired the missiles, and I watched 3 ships explode. Thousands of them died, and I felt nothing, just relief that my aim was good." "That's normal in combat," Sangmi said. "But they were alive," Wu continued. "I know they were trying to kill us. I know they destroyed the worlds, but they were still living beings, and I killed them without thinking twice. What does that make me?" Sangmi was quiet for a moment. "It makes you a soldier doing his duty. It makes you someone willing to make hard choices so others can live." "Or it makes me a monster," Wu said. "Maybe both," Sangmi admitted. "War doesn't make us heroes, Ensign. It makes us survivors with blood on our hands. The question isn't whether you can avoid that. The question is whether you can live with it and still be a good person afterward." She stood up to leave, then paused. "You want to know the difference between us and they destroy without thinking. We destroy while questioning ourselves. That moral weight you're feeling, that's your humanity. Don't lose it." On the Indomitable, Dr. Sun was meeting with Elder, an ancient historian who had escaped the destruction. The Elder's shell was dull with age, and its movements were slow, but its mind was sharp. "Tell me about your people's history," Sun asked. "Before the came." Elder's translator made a sound like a sigh. "We were explorers once, warriors even in our distant past, but 300 years ago we made a choice. We decided that violence was primitive, that advanced civilizations should solve problems through negotiation and understanding." "That's admirable," Sun said. "It was suicide," corrected. "We became so committed to peace that we forgot how to defend ourselves. We dismantled our military, reduced our weapons, trusted in the Council's protection. When the came, we had nothing to fight them with. We had spent centuries learning to build and create. We had forgotten how to destroy." "Do you regret that choice?" Sun asked. "I regret that we didn't find balance," said. "Your people haven't forgotten how to fight, but you also build, create, and help. You carry both capabilities. Perhaps that is wisdom we lacked." The conversation was interrupted by alarms. They were launching a counterattack, but not against the human military. They were targeting the refugee fleet. Captain Jinho received the alert immediately. "All ships, emergency recall. They are going after the refugees." The human fleet rushed to intercept, but they were scattered across 3 systems. It would take time to gather enough force to protect the refugees. "We won't make it in time," Lieutenant Yang said, calculating vectors. "Though we'll reach them in 20 minutes, we need 40. Jinho looked at the tactical display. 13 human ships were close enough to intercept, including the Indomitable. Against them, a fleet of over 200 vessels. "Then we buy time with what we have," Jinho decided. "All nearby ships form on the Indomitable. We're going to block them." "Captain, that's suicide," Yang protested. "We'll be outnumbered 15 to 1. "I know," Jinho said calmly. "Inform Admiral Sangmi of our intentions. And Yang, it's been an honor serving with you." The 13 human ships positioned themselves between the fleet and the refugee convoy. Behind them, thousands of civilians watched in horror as a tiny human force prepared to face impossible odds. "Why do they do this?" a young asked. "Why sacrifice themselves for us?" "Because that's what humans do," said quietly. "They protect what they've decided is theirs, and they've decided we're worth protecting." The battle was brutal. The fleet crashed into the human defensive line like a wave against rocks. The Indomitable shook under repeated impacts. Hull breaches appeared on 3 decks. The shields failed completely after 10 minutes. Captain Jinho gripped his command chair as another explosion rocked the ship. "Damage report." "Hull integrity at 40%, Yang shouted over the alarms. "We've lost main weapons. Life support is failing on decks 5 through 7. Captain, we can't hold much longer." We hold until the refugees are safe, Jinho ordered. Fire everything we have left. The Indomitable's remaining weapons blazed continuously. Around it, the other 12 ships fought with the same desperate determination. 2 destroyers were already destroyed. A cruiser was venting atmosphere and listing badly. But they held the line. Every second they delayed, there was another second for the refugees to escape. Every ship they destroyed was one fewer chasing the civilians. Then the command vessel targeted the Indomitable directly. A massive energy beam pierced through the weakened shields and tore through the hull. Jinho was thrown from his chair as the bridge exploded around him. He woke up seconds or minutes later, he couldn't tell. Half the bridge crew was dead. Yang was bleeding from a head wound but still at his station. "Captain," Yang said, his voice strangely calm. "The ship is done. Core breach in 5 minutes. We need to evacuate." Jinho pulled himself up, pain shooting through his right side. He looked down and saw his arm was badly damaged, maybe beyond saving. His vision blurred from his left eye, and when he touched his face, his hand came away bloody. "Order all hands to escape pods," Jinho commanded. "You too, Lieutenant." "What about you?" Yang asked. "Someone needs to make sure this ship does some good on the way out," Jinho said. He pulled himself to the helm controls. "I'm going to ram the command ship. It'll give the other ships a chance to regroup." "Captain, you'll die," Yang said. "Then I die protecting people who needed help," Jinho replied. "Now go, that's an order." Yang hesitated, then saluted. "It's been an honor, sir." The lieutenant gathered the surviving bridge crew and headed to the escape pods. Jinho waited until the evacuation was complete, then locked the helm and aimed the dying Indomitable directly at the largest vessel. He thought about Earth, about the small apartment he'd never see again, about the life he might have had if he'd chosen a different path, but he didn't regret his choices. The would live, that mattered. The Indomitable struck the command ship at full speed. The collision destroyed both vessels instantly. The shockwave scattered the fleet, giving the remaining human ships time to regroup. And in that moment of chaos, the refugee fleet escaped to safety. Yang watched from his escape pod as the Indomitable disappeared in a ball of fire. Around him, other pods carried the survivors. They had lost their ship and their captain, but they had saved thousands of lives. "Did he make it?" another survivor asked over the communication channel. "No," Yang said softly, "but he wouldn't have wanted it any other way." Hours later, Admiral Sangmi stood in the medical bay again, this time looking at Captain Jinho. Against all odds, he had survived. His pod had been recovered by a search team. He was missing his right arm and his left eye, and the doctors said he would need months of recovery. But he was alive. "You're an idiot," Sangmi told him. "You were supposed to wait for reinforcements." "The refugees didn't have time to wait," Jinho replied weakly. "Besides, I thought ramming the enemy would send a clear message." "What message is that?" Sangmi asked. "That humans will literally use our ships as weapons if we run out of ammunition," Jinho said with a weak smile. "I hope they appreciate the creativity." Despite everything, Sangmi smiled. "Get some rest, Captain. When you recover, I'm promoting you to Admiral. We need people willing to make impossible choices." Later, visited Jinho in the medical bay. The leader stood silently for a moment, looking at the injured human. "Why?" finally asked. "Why sacrifice so much for us?" Jinho turned his remaining eye toward the alien. "Because you asked for help, because your people didn't deserve to die, and because humans have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We chose to do something." His translator couldn't convey the emotion in this response, but the meaning was clear. Gratitude mixed with sorrow, respect mixed with guilt. "We will never forget this," said. "Whatever happens, the people will remember that humanity bled for us." "Just remember that we're not always monsters," Jinho said quietly. Sometimes we're the heroes, sometimes we're both at once. 6 months after the first human ship arrived to help the war was over. The swarm had retreated to their innermost systems, broken and afraid. For the first time in their history, they had learned what it meant to lose. Admiral Sangmi stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the final reports come in. Total human casualties, 3,000 dead, 8,000 wounded, 12 ships destroyed, 47 damaged beyond immediate repair. The cost had been high, but they had achieved the impossible. The civilization was saved. But the galaxy's response was not what anyone expected. The Galactic Council sent representatives to meet with the human fleet. They arrived in an impressive diplomatic vessel, surrounded by escort ships as if they expected trouble. Ambassador met them in a neutral space station, with Admiral Sangmi watching from a secure channel. The Council's lead representative was a tall, skinned being from a species called the Volans. It spoke with a voice full of barely contained anger. The Council condemns humanity's unauthorized military action, they said. You violated the quarantine. You engaged in warfare without Council approval. Your methods were brutal and violated several interstellar conventions regarding acceptable combat. Listened calmly, then replied. The Council refused to help when the requested aid. You declared the cost too high and negotiated territory with the while an entire civilization was being exterminated. We did what you wouldn't. We saved lives. At what cost? Another council member demanded. You showed the galaxy what humans are capable of. Now every species fears you will turn that violence against them. Good, Admiral Sangmi's voice cut in, broadcast from the Vengeance. Let them fear us. Let them know that humans protect their allies and destroy their enemies. Maybe next time the Council will think twice before abandoning innocent people to genocide. The meeting turned heated. Some Council members demanded sanctions against Earth. Others argued that humanity had only done what the Council should have done. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Ambassador stood and delivered humanity's terms. Earth will accept responsibility for our actions, she said. But we have conditions. 1. The quarantine on Earth is lifted. We're part of this galaxy whether you like it or not. 2. Humanity receives full Council membership with voting rights. 3. Any species facing extinction has the right to request human military aid, and the Council cannot prevent us from responding. 4. Humans will accept oversight on our military actions, but we won't apologize for saving the. And if we refuse, the representative asked. Then we leave the Council entirely and operate independently, replied. We've proven we don't need your permission to do what's right, but we'd prefer to work with you rather than against you. The Council went into closed session. 3 days later, they delivered their decision. By a narrow vote, they accepted humanity's terms. Earth was officially recognized as a galactic power, no longer quarantined, no longer isolated. But the galaxy remained divided on what this meant. On Earth, the response was complicated. Captain Jinho, now promoted to admiral despite his injuries, watched the news broadcasts. Some humans celebrated the victory. Others questioned the cost and methods. His prosthetic arm and eye were the best technology could provide, but they felt strange, foreign. He still woke up at night seeing the Indomitable explode in his dreams. Dr. Sun visited him at his recovery facility. How are you feeling? Like I should have died with my ship, Jinho admitted. Like I did something necessary but not something I'm proud of. That's the burden of command, Sun said gently. You saved thousands of lives, that matters. I also took thousands of lives, Jinho countered. They were living beings, Sun. They were doing what their biology programmed them to do. Were we right to kill them for that? I don't know, Sun said honestly. But I know you were right to save the. Sometimes there are no perfect choices, only necessary ones. Colonel Dongwu faced his own struggles. He retired from active duty and took a position training other species in defensive tactics. His students were terrified of him at first, this human who had led boarding actions against the. But he proved to be an excellent teacher, patient and understanding. He taught them not just how to fight, but how to survive in extreme conditions, how to turn fear into strength, how to protect what matters. The goal isn't to become human, he told his students. The goal is to learn from us. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. That made us resilient. You can learn resilience without becoming monsters. Engineer Bo Young took a different path. She was horrified by how effective her weapons had been. Instead of designing more destructive technology, she focused on defensive systems. She developed shields that could withstand extreme conditions, habitats that could survive on dangerous worlds, and medical technology that saved lives. I helped kill thousands, she told her assistant. Now I need to help save millions. It's the only way I can live with myself. Pilot Ho, the reckless fighter ace, surprised everyone by seeking therapy. He had faced death dozens of times during the war and survived when he expected to die. Now he had to figure out how to live. I thought I wanted to go out in a blaze of glory, he told his therapist. But I survived, and now I have to figure out what to do with this life I didn't expect to have. His therapist smiled. That's very human, you know. Surviving when we should die, then having to figure out what that survival means. Admiral Sangmi faced perhaps the hardest questions. She had led the war, made the difficult decisions, approved tactics that the galaxy considered brutal. Some called her a war criminal, others called her a hero. She called herself a soldier who did her job. She established a memorial on Earth for everyone who died in the war, human and alike. The inscription read, "To those who died in conflict, may we learn from this price, and may future generations find better paths than war." When questioned about including names on the memorial, she replied, "They were our enemies, but they were alive. That deserves acknowledgement." Began the long process of rebuilding. Their worlds were, their population reduced, but they survived, and they didn't rebuild alone. Human engineers arrived to help construct new cities. Human doctors worked alongside healers. Human teachers shared knowledge while learning from mathematics and philosophy. Led the reconstruction effort. When asked about working so closely with humans, said, "They saved us when no one else would. How could we do anything but trust them?" A year after the war ended, a joint ceremony was held on the first rebuilt world. Humans and gathered to celebrate the new beginning. Admiral Jinho attended, still uncomfortable with crowds but determined to show support. Elder approached him during the ceremony. "Admiral, I've been thinking about what you said in the medical bay, about humans being both monsters and heroes." "Yes," Jinho prompted. "I think I understand now," said. "You're both because you have the capacity for both. You can be terrible when necessary, but you choose to be good when possible. That choice is what defines you." "I hope you're right," Jinho said. "Because if we're wrong about ourselves, if we really are just monsters with good intentions, then the galaxy has a serious problem." "No," disagreed. "Monsters don't question themselves. Monsters don't build memorials for their enemies. Monsters don't help rebuild the worlds they helped save. You're flawed, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But you're not monsters. You're survivors who learned compassion." The conversation stayed with Jinho. Maybe was right. Maybe humanity could be dangerous without being evil. Maybe they could protect without becoming the thing they fought against. 5 years after the war, humanity had become an integral part of galactic society. Earth's military served as a defensive force for vulnerable species. Human engineers helped terraform hostile worlds. Human scientists collaborated with alien researchers on projects that benefited everyone. But Earth also maintained strict rules about military deployment. No offensive wars without council approval. No intervention in internal conflicts. No weapons of mass destruction except in existential threats. They had learned from history. Power without responsibility led to tyranny. Strength without morality led to monstrosity. Admiral Sangmi, now retired, gave a speech at the Human Defense Academy. She spoke to the new graduates who would carry humanity's responsibilities forward. You come from she told them. You evolved as predators on a planet that tried to kill you every day. That makes you dangerous. That makes you strong. But it also gave you something precious. The ability to survive impossible situations and still care about others. She paused, looking at the young faces before her. Some species in this galaxy think strength means domination. Others think peace means passivity. Humans know better. Strength means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Peace means being strong enough that no one dares threaten it. You will face situations where violence is necessary. When that happens, be decisive, be effective, but never lose sight of why you fight. The graduates listened intently. We are Sangmi continued. We survived Earth and now we help others survive the galaxy. That's our purpose, that's our burden, and that's our honor. Carry it well. On the rebuilt, children learned about the war in school. They studied the invasion, the Council's abandonment, and humanity's intervention. They learned the names of the humans who died saving their species. One young asked her teacher, "Are humans scary?" The teacher, who had lived through the war, thought carefully before answering. Yes, she said honestly, humans are scary. They come from a world that would kill most species in days. They evolved fighting for survival against predators we can't imagine. They are capable of terrible violence. Then why do we trust them? The child asked. Because, the teacher replied, they're also capable of terrible kindness. They crossed the galaxy to save people they had never met. They sacrificed themselves for us when their own leaders said it was too dangerous. They rebuilt our worlds when they could have just left. Humans are scary because they're powerful, but we trust them because they chose to use that power to help us. The child considered this, so they're good. They're complicated, the teacher said. Like all living beings, they can be both kind and cruel, gentle and violent, peaceful and aggressive. The important thing is that they try to be good more often than they try to be bad. And when they fail, they acknowledge it and try to do better. I think I understand, the child said. They're like us, just more. Exactly, the teacher agreed. Back on Earth, Admiral Jinho stood at the memorial he visited every month. His prosthetic hand traced the names carved in stone. 3,000 humans who never came home. Thousands of who died in a war they didn't choose. Millions of lost before help arrived. Was it worth it? Dr. Sun asked, joining him at the memorial. Ask me again in 100 years, Jinho replied. If humanity becomes a force for good in this galaxy, if we protect more lives than we take, if we build more than we destroy, then yes, it was worth it. And if we become the monsters the Council feared? Sun asked. Then we failed, Jinho said simply, and all these deaths were for nothing. They stood in silence, remembering the price of survival, the cost of heroism, and the burden of being a species capable of both creating and destroying. Above them, human ships patrolled the stars, watching over a galaxy that both feared and needed them. The had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. But perhaps, Jinho thought, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. Not perfect heroes from sanitized worlds, but flawed survivors from a harsh one. People who understood that sometimes, protecting life meant being willing to take it. People who carried the weight of that contradiction and tried to do better anyway. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in galactic history, vulnerable species knew they had protectors who understood survival, who valued sacrifice, and who would fight for them when no one else would. The age of the had begun.